Hey, everybody. I am really excited to be hosting this episode of Groundwork TV, and we've got a wonderful conversation ahead of us. I'm Joe, I think you guys know, founder of Groundwork Project, and I'm here with Gabriel Caballero, who's the Executive Director of People's Budget Birmingham, which is a grassroots coalition focused on giving people in Birmingham a say in how the city spends its tax dollars. What an incredible and novel idea. So we'll get on into the details here and why what the coalition that Gabriel leads is so amazing and incredible. And Gabriel, I don't want to steal your thunder, so thrilled to be here with you today. Introduce yourself, tell us a little about who you are, how you got into organizing, and a bit about People's Budget Birmingham.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Joe, and thank you, Groundwork Project, for bringing us together. So my name is Gabriel Caballero. It's Gabriel, Gabri. Any of those names are great. That's why I chose this name. I'm the executive director at People's Budget Birmingham, and we are an organization that started back in around 2020, around the start of the pandemic. We noticed that the city was not spending our tax dollars in any meaningful way to kind of help us respond to that. And so we've been here for quite a while. And then my background is actually in immigrant rights organizing and LGBTQ rights organizing. And somehow, in some unwieldy path, I ended up here at People's Budget, being able to serve as director.
That's awesome, and I want to get into a little bit more of the details of your background and how you ended up coming to People's Budget Birmingham. I would also love for folks to get a better understanding about what participatory budgeting actually is and how it works, because I think most people kind of think that you elect a mayor, you elect the city council, and they kind of set a budget, they tax you, and then they spend your dollars, and you don't really know what happens in that box otherwise. So break it down for us, and where do you guys come in?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is try to say participatory 5 times fast. It is quite a mouthful. But I think that's probably the most important word in this concept of participatory budgeting. And that means that people are working together collaboratively in order to determine how part or an entire budget is being spent. And so this can look in many different ways. One of the ways it could look, for example, is if neighborhoods, we have 99 here in Birmingham, if a neighborhood got together and said, okay, we want to spend this $1 million in this particular way, we want the sidewalks, we want this bus stop, we want the library funded, and then they pitch that up to city officials, who then, of course, in an ideal world, would approve it and then be able to disperse and spend those dollars to benefit that. Um, it can work in many different ways. I mean, if you think about yourself and maybe any partner or family, maybe sometimes you have to negotiate how much you're going to spend on groceries or how much is going to go towards vacation for the next year if you're able to go on vacation. We do this all the time. We collaborate all the time, and we just want to apply this idea that together we can come up with better things than we could alone, to the very tax dollars that we pay into the city.
So super interesting, and you're right. So married with 2 kids, there's negotiation that happens every day about everything from bedtime to breakfast and everything in between, right? Or breakfast to bedtime, I should say, and everything in between. But I guess one piece that I'm curious about is that all sounds great. Most folks would think if it's 99 different neighborhoods, that each neighborhood is going to kind of put their own priorities first. So fund our sidewalks, fund our speed bumps, fund our library. That should be the number one thing, not necessarily the one about cross town. How do you balance the different aspects of what it actually means to be participatory between the individualized communities versus the greater whole?
Yeah, so part of the process for some participatory budgeting programs, and I should name that for us, it is a vision to be able to apply this to Birmingham, and that's what our work is. And we've been doing some deep canvassing, so that means we hang out on people's porches and we talk to them and ask them what they would like their city or their tax dollars spent on, right? And it's through that that we've actually learned that there's a big part that has to do with trust.
Mhm.
So right now we have been kind of fractured, and our communities have been so isolated that we don't necessarily have that trust with our neighbors. So a cornerstone of being able to do this together is building that trust, building those relationships that neighbors know one another. In fact, I just finished a few conversations, a few meaning a few dozen conversations with some residents, and something that kept coming up for me was that they noticed that one of the strengths their neighborhoods had was that such and such checks on their neighbor who they know stays at home all day. Or, they might go by a food bank and they're like, well, these things are all things that my other neighbor really appreciates. Or someone else was celebrating the fact that their libraries served as these third spaces where anyone could go and you could meet the people around you. I think for this to work, let's take the neighborhood example that I gave of 99 neighborhoods and 1 million for each one. They would be determining how those funds are spent in their neighborhood. But there are other ways to collaborate, right? We could do it by community. There are 33 of those. People could pool their money together in order to decide what's best for that series or grouping of neighborhoods. And in fact, we've been doing that here in Birmingham for quite some time. But the problem is here in Birmingham, we have neighborhood associations, but they're very underfunded. They only get about $2,000 a year to spend on stuff, right? So we recently just sponsored some programming, a community fun day, for one of our neighborhood associations because the city was unable to provide them with any resources to serve their own people. And so because of that, that's kind of why it takes a little bit of hope. Imagination and trust to be able to pull this off. And we're not naive. So it's not like we think it's going to be all hunky dory and there's never going to be conflict. I think the real challenge is who's willing to go through that conflict in order to make their neighborhood better.
Well, it's amazing to listen to you talk about it in terms of what the kind of the philosophy and vision behind it. But really what it comes down to is community building, right? And creating a space for communities to come together and build that trust, know each other, know their neighborhoods, and build up a relationship to know that a lot of the community work that I've done, from time in Peace Corps to time in Northern Ireland to my time in office, right? It is you see communities that have gone through challenges, whether that's developmental challenges or whether that's post-conflict, and they get to a point where they recognize that in order for my kid to succeed, your kid has to succeed too, right? And that our
Exactly.
kids are linked. And once you get to that point, then it becomes a broader conversation around how can we go about allocating these resources together, right? Which strengthens democracy, it builds stronger communities, it's more equitable distribution of resources. It's kind of what the whole point of a democracy is about. And you guys are doing the hard work to create that space to do it. So bravo and thank you. And so I'd love to have you to kind of take us down one more level. Can you walk us through a little bit of that process? And you said you've had dozens of conversations. Like, how does that happen? Do you just like walk up to people and start asking them questions? Like, what does actual work look like day to day?
Yes. We walk up to people and have conversations. Sometimes they walk up to us and we
No
have
way.
conversations.
That's wild.
Well, that's if we have food or free stuff to give away, people are like, can I get some of that? And we're like, can we get some of your thoughts? Can we get some of your ideas? So when we first started this campaign, it felt very acute. So there was this very brief timeline. We received back in 2020. It's the height of the pandemic. Librarians have been furloughed. Police are well funded. People are in their homes, and we thought that there was a weird imbalance with that, where there was this place that could serve community being like shut down. So librarians were losing their salaries. They weren't able to get paid during a pandemic, right? But then there were other folks while everyone's home who were still being fully well paid and everything was fine. And so for us, that created such a tension and such discomfort that in 2020 we released a survey and we got about 800 respondents, which was I think 2 or 3 times more than the city received in their own budget survey. We mobilized people to city council. It was in this very brief period of time, like maybe 2 or 3 months, where we created such an uproar, and we were able to use that energy in order to then advocate for our city budget to change. The budget didn't change, but we got the closest we probably ever have. Usually here in the city of Birmingham, our budget is passed unanimously. We got 4 people to vote against that budget that year. It still passed, unfortunately, but it was a success. We had to switch gears after that. We had to switch gears because you can't keep people in a place of constant sense of urgency, emergency, and expect that to be sustainable, to be impactful, or to be effective. It can be effective in a brief period, but it's not something that people are going to be able to engage with on a longer term basis. And so the way we switched things up was we started deep canvassing, which for us, we simply asked people, hey, do you feel like the city's spending your tax dollars fairly in your neighborhood? That's our opening question. Yes or no? And then we're like, why?
Mhm.
And it's through asking the constant why, almost like a kid, almost like we're a
Right.
child.
I'm
We're in
familiar
front
with
of
that.
these people that we've never met, right? Yeah, you're familiar with that, that we've never met. And we're like, okay, but why? And then we switch it and we ask them, so how could it be better? We ask people to engage their imagination and to find motivation and drive in advocating for their own needs through that place of creativity, through that place of hope, through that place of, you're right, I do deserve better. So that's kind of what we've been doing for the last few years. And the way we do it is we knock people's doors. Yes, we pay people to talk to people who are strangers. We also call people when it's raining or it's incredibly hot here in Birmingham, Alabama. And then we also host a yearly movement assembly. And an assembly for us is an opportunity to gauge where we're at, how people are feeling, where the campaign should go next, what our efforts should be, to do a little bit of political education so people understand what is the budget process, what are the ways for people to advocate for themselves. And in this most recent one, and I'm really excited about this, in this most recent one, we surfaced ideas from over 100 people around what could go into an ordinance, what could go into a law that establishes participatory budgeting here in the city. Um, and that for us was it was an affirmation that we are doing this right because we are asking everyday people, okay, but what if we could change the material conditions? How do you imagine that could happen? And how can we put pen to paper so that it does happen?
Gary, I remember years ago when I was a member of Congress. I was young when I got elected, so I was like sent off to go speak to young people because I was a young person, which was like weird because I was, in my 30s, and they're like, go talk to college kids. It's like, that's fine, but they're 10
Yeah.
years younger than I am, so like,
Right.
I'm not. They don't think I'm young. You guys think I'm young. They don't. Anyway, I'm off at this college, and I'm like 8th in line to speak at something, and I'm looking up at the audience, being like, "Why the heck would you ever come listen to me after I'm 8th in line? Why do you stick around?" And the answer was what you hit on, was like free pizza, right? But even then, like if I were there, I would have eaten my 2 slices, and I would have gotten out of that place. I don't need to listen to the 8th person talk. So I actually started asking questions. Like literally, why are you here? Like what do you possibly? Why do you think this is a good use of your time listening to me? And you got a crowd much more involved, and you actually got them like engaged in a conversation. And I started then doing it to every time I went to go to speak to a school, and actually many of the town halls I would do. And I did it at our kids' school last summer, and it was a 3rd grade class. Last fall, they were doing a thing about government and what is government. And I said, government's process. Government is the things we do together. It's the things to try to solve a challenge that confronts us. And so let's ask these 3rd graders, what do you want to see in your classroom, right? And it was awesome. It was, we want more recess, we want candy and vending machines, we want the vending machines to be free, we want this, right? And we want a pool. It was 3rd grade, 3rd grade dream. It was then very shrewd where you got one student that said, we want a better teacher's lounge. It's like, why do you want a better teacher's lounge? I said, well, we figured that if we wanted to get what we wanted, the teachers probably needed something that they wanted too. So we're going to create the coalition with the teachers. And I was like, you are going to be a great campaign operative, right? But the framework that changes when you ask people the question of why. And what would you like to see? And not being talked at, not being legislated upon, not being told, hey, this was in fact the best way we could allocate your dollars. But like, do you think it was? Did you feel it? Did you see these money? And if you didn't, how can we justify it? And this was the justification for the putting more money here versus there, and like, explaining it, but engaging people in that process. It does transform the relationship that you have. It creates accountability, it creates agency, so that people feel like they are participating in that democracy. So I love, obviously, all of that. I'd love for you to touch base briefly on, you created a dashboard, right? So like, talk to me about the dashboard and what that means and what you've seen as a reaction to it.
Wow. Gosh, I forgot we created a dashboard. That was such a long process. I wanna take a brief
Yeah.
step back. I think something you illustrated by asking people questions, and something that we hope to do by asking people questions, is people love to talk, but they also love to be listened to.
Yes.
And at PBB, we don't have the thousands of staff that the city does.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have all of this decision making power. But what we can offer, and what we're base building on, and what we're trying to build like through this effort, is we are providing a relational and social alternative to how city interacts with its constituents.
Mm-hmm.
We listen,
Mm-hmm.
we ask questions, and then we help people navigate these systems and try to create pressure upon decision makers so that they listen to them too, right? And so we see that as our responsibility. And to switch gears a little bit, I mean, or to switch to the most recent question around this dashboard, something we noticed, and again, I just had a bunch of conversations. I'm exploring this issue. I'm exploring this question of, we know people want a difference. We know what different, or some of what those differences are within their material conditions. But I was like, do people even think that a budget is worth organizing around?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question I've been asking myself. And so I started asking residents, I started scheduling conversations with them. So I've had about 20 something conversations that we're going to be going off of for this effort. And something that came up in that was that people did feel like the Birmingham city budget was important. They did feel like it was having an impact on them, but very few of them had tried or achieved finding out what the budget is even spent on.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the vision behind this dashboard that we designed, or that we built. So it's on our website. Lord hopes, I really hope that it's live and active right now, because there's nothing as challenging as building your own database and then launching a dashboard that you built yourself. And so we built this tool where we wanted to answer some of the questions, and also to agitate the public to begin to more critically think about how city money is being spent. And so we took 10 years worth of operating budgets, and about 7 years of capital improvement budgets. And I might have those two reversed.
Mm-hmm.
But just know, about a decade of budgets. And there are two. There's the ones that pave your roadways and sidewalks, and there's the one that pays the salaries of the staff that provide you services. And so we scoured that. It took us about a year to not only pull all of that information, but to learn the skills to host our own database, to produce our own like images and graphics around what we learned, and then to simplify that so that anybody could approach it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at our dashboard, and it's on peoplesbudgetbirmingham.org, when you look at our dashboard, our headers are questions.
Mm-hmm.
This whole thing is about questions. So for example, it says, what is an operating budget? And it explains it to you, and then it shows you what's in it. It asks, what is a capital budget? It shows it to you, or it explains it to you, but then we wanted to do something to really get people fired up. Because we had this treasure trove of capital improvements, we're talking about bus stops, we're talking about facilities, public facilities, we're talking about roadways, sidewalks, infrastructure, the material conditions. It took us a long time to understand how to do this, but we charted every single project because they have an address, and we overlaid it with every single neighborhood because they have a shape.
Mhm.
And what we found, we asked our people, we asked our constituents last year, what do you notice about the distribution of long-term investments in the city? And you see these very bright red like areas. They're almost all downtown. And people were like, they felt affirmed.
Mhm.
We believed them, they believed themselves, and we showed them that it was true. And when we did that, that was kind of the purpose and vision of this budget, right? And to show people how departments differ and how they're invested. Why you can see the police budget is far higher than any other budget within the city is operating, and then you can barely make out where the libraries or the public parks are being spent, like where those monies are being spent. And so that's kind of the vision of our dashboard, which was to continue to encourage people to reflect and to think about how things could be different, and to see what the conditions actually are, and to affirm that what they're feeling is true.
I love that, and I love the way that you explain that in the the discovery and the validation, the affirmation that comes from what communities know but can't quite prove, don't have the number or the access to be able to prove, and then you provided that to them. So I think my guess is that you've actually answered my next question, but and I want to give it to you to close out here because I know we don't have a ton of time left. But give me 2 or 3 quick kind of outcomes and successes that you're most proud of.
2 or 3 quick outcomes or
Success stories,
successes.
just from what,
Yeah.
and I mean, listen, from what you've told me, I mean, look, the active, the engagement, the conversation, the empowerment, the agency, the information, all of that is, each one of those is a success from my end.
Okay. Then I'll give one because I want to take people through, I guess, our theory of change or why we do things the way we do. I sent out 8 canvassers into a specific part of the city. So we mostly focus on low income or predominantly POC areas of our city because we are a majority Black city.
Mhm.
So we sent folks out to this area in North Avondale, which is the town is segregated by a railroad. There's South Avondale or just Avondale, right? People can't usually access and cross because there's a train on the tracks during the morning and the evening when people are going home from work. We sent people out there and we knocked doors. One of the folks who responded to us was actually the president of the neighborhood association of that neighborhood. And for about 2 years, we spent a relationship with them, mobilizing them to city council meetings, getting to talk with them about their programming and what they're doing, having them attend our movement assembly. And it was because of that relationship building that we were able to have more of an impact in their neighborhood, like spending, than the city was because of that relationship. Our money, which in all honesty, it should be our money, like the tax dollars money that is being invested into that neighborhood. But it was because we knocked her door that we were able to have an impact on the entire neighborhood. If we hadn't done the scary thing, gone to strangers and asked them what they thought, we would have never met her. If we wouldn't have picked up the phone and asked her how she was doing a few weeks later, a few months later, and kept inviting her back, we wouldn't have gotten to know her in the way that we did. And it's because of that that we were able to this year support her and her efforts because we knew that city investment wasn't going to do it. So that's the story. That's the success story that I can share now.
Love that. Bravo. And I love how you say it all happened because you did the scary thing, which was talking to somebody, right?
Yep.
Knocking on a door and listening. Look, I could talk all day about this, and I find the work so important and more critical now than it has been in decades, if not ever. And so grateful for your time to be able to have this conversation and for the work that you guys are doing on a daily basis. But I want to give you the last word. So one last time here, what's on the horizon for People's Budget Birmingham, and anything in particular that you're excited about?
Within the next year or two, our goal is to enact participatory budgeting by doing a referendum. We want to give the vote, the choice, right back to the people and ask them, is this something you want? And we want to do it in such a way that the people get to decide here in the city of Birmingham if they will vote to enact a policy that allows us to practice this like wonderful thing, or if they choose that it's not right for them. And so I think at our core and on the horizon, we really want to create democratic power, to create participatory power. And who knows, maybe in 2 years, we'll not only have it, Joe, but we'll be inviting you and to become a resident so you can participate.
Love that, man. Love that. Hey, thank you for the example. Thank you for this work. And look, I think, from my vantage point, Boston and Birmingham here, right? But one of the major challenges we see across the country, and particularly at this moment, is things are being done to people, not with people. And that can be a source of frustration and animation and push resistance, which is happening. It can also be, you touched on this earlier, and it struck a chord with me, of this sense of urgency and emergency, but that people can't keep that up for years at a time, right? It's exhausting, and you've got kids to raise and jobs to do and obligations to meet. And so the folks that are trying to keep up that emergency know that they can outlast you to some extent. And so creating the space to ask those questions, to come together, to actually show what community building is, to create agency, to build engagement and outcome and confidence and support, to build and grow and create that momentum, is so critically important now. And obviously Birmingham has been at the heart of doing this work, but guiding our country through some of its most searing civil rights moments in our history. And so thank you for carrying that on. And thank you for having faith in a system here that will eventually do what we all should be doing anyway, which is empowering our people. So, Gabby, thank you. Really, really grateful to you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you so much.